My name is Amelia, and this story begins with the kind of moment you never forget. The kind that slices your life into two halves before and after. The front door clicked shut behind me. It was the same sound it had made 1,000 times before, but that afternoon it felt different. Hollow, heavy. I had only come back because I forgot my car keys. That was it. A small mistake, something ordinary. But walking into that house set everything in motion. I stood in the foyer, the marble floor cold beneath my shoes, my breath catching as I searched my purse again. No keys. I cursed under my breath, trying to remember where I left them. My earrings. I had switched them upstairs, rushing to leave for my mother's birthday lunch. They had to be on the nightstand. So I slipped off my heels, bare feet against the icy floor, and started toward the staircase. The house was too quiet, too still. It was early afternoon light spilling through the tall windows, but something about it pressed against me like the walls themselves were listening. Normally, I would have called out to my husband Antonio to let him know I was back. But something held me. A weight in my chest. A prickling at the back of my neck. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step echoing in my ears. When I reached the landing, I noticed it immediately. Our bedroom door was ajar. Just a sliver, but enough to see shadows moving inside. My pulse quickened. Antonio must have come home early. Maybe this was a chance. Maybe we could finally talk about the distance between us, the way our marriage had been unraveling, thread by thread. I pressed forward, my heart begging for connection. Then I froze, because through the narrow gap came voices, not one but two. Antonio's voice was low, intimate, softer than he'd spoken to me in months, and the second voice, it made my blood turn cold. My sister, my twin sister, Vanessa. Her tone was silky, almost pitying. She has no idea, does she? I pressed my back against the wall, trembling, fighting to stay silent. Through that opening I saw them. Antonio's shirt half unbuttoned, Vanessa's hair dark against my pillow. My pillow. Every sound was a knife. Antonio whispered, "Leslie's always been so naive. She believed every story, believed I was working late, believed I still wanted this marriage. She believed everything." And Vanessa laughed, a sharp, glass-breaking laugh that gutted me. My knees buckled, and I slid down against the wallpaper, the world spinning. My own husband, my own sister, the people who should have been my safety. Instead, they had carved out a secret world right in my bed while I played the fool. I bit into my fist to stop myself from crying out. The taste of iron filled my mouth, my own blood. My heart screamed questions. How long? Why? What did I do wrong? But no answers came. Only the sound of their voices entwined like poison. Only the image burned into my mind of betrayal, on the sheets where I had slept hours before. That was the moment my life cracked open. The moment everything I thought I knew became a lie. I came back to grab a set of keys, but what I really found was the key to the truth. And the truth was darker than I could have ever imagined. Why, if you've ever discovered a betrayal so deep, it felt like the floor was ripped out from under you, then you know the silence that follows. The way the world blurs, the way your own breath becomes too loud. This was only the beginning. I pressed myself against the wall, my palms damp, trying to steady my breath. My whole body felt like it was betraying me, shaking, trembling, aching to scream. But I couldn't. Not yet. My ears strained toward the voices spilling through the crack of the door. Vanessa's tone dripped with contempt. "She really thought you needed space, Antonio. She believed all those nights you stayed late at work. Pathetic." Pathetic. That word sliced deeper than any knife. It wasn't enough for them to betray me, they had to mock me too. My mind spun with memories, the countless evenings I had sat at our kitchen table, waiting for Antonio to come home, convincing myself he was just busy. The times I defended Vanessa, when others said she was selfish, telling them they didn't know her like I did. All of it collapsed around me. Antonio's chuckle followed, low and cruel. "She's always been easy to fool. Even as kids, she believed your stories, Vanessa. She believed your mother loved her as much as you. She believed she mattered." My stomach turned to stone. Why were they talking about my mother? What did Vanessa mean when she said as much as you? The words tangled into knots in my head. I slid further down the wall, covering my mouth to keep the sobs trapped inside. Each syllable from that room was another fracture in the foundation of my life. And then, silence. For a moment, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe they'd both fallen asleep, tangled in the betrayal on my sheets. But Antonio's voice returned different, now sharper. "When are you going to tell her about your father's will?" The will. My breath caught. My father had died 3 years ago. I remembered the funeral, the quiet dignity in my mother's face, the reading of the will that had left everything to her. At least that's what I had been told. Vanessa's answer was like a knife twist. Why would I tell her anything? Leslie deserves nothing. And with the lawyer in my pocket, she will get nothing. The hallway spun around me. The will had been tampered with, my inheritance stolen, and my sister, my twin, was at the center of it. I pressed my fist harder against my lips until I tasted blood. I wanted to storm in, to scream, to tear the truth out of their throats. But something deeper held me back. Fear. The kind of fear that comes when you realize the people closest to you are capable of unimaginable cruelty. And then Vanessa delivered the final blow. Besides, Monica hates her as much as I do, maybe more. She's not even her daughter. The words dropped like a bomb in my chest. Not her daughter. My vision blurred, my ears rang, but I forced myself to stay still, to listen, to hold on to every word. Because this wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. I staggered backward down the stairs, clutching the railing, desperate to get out before the sobs broke free. Somehow I made it to my car. One moment I was on the hallway floor, the next, I was gripping the steering wheel, staring at the home I thought was mine. The echo of their laughter still clawed at my mind. Not my mother's daughter, not my husband's partner, not even worthy of the life I thought I had. Everything had been stolen, but as the tears spilled, a strange clarity cut through the fog. If they wanted me to believe I was weak, they were wrong. I wasn't going to run forever. I was going to fight. I wiped my face and forced myself to breathe. And before I tell you what happened next, I want to pause and ask you something important. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your country in the comments below, because I love knowing where my global family is listening in from. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to hit subscribe. These true stories of betrayal and revenge are what keep our community strong, and your support helps me share even more of them. That day sitting in the car, I thought my world had ended. But really, it had only just begun. The lies were unraveling, and the truth was clawing its way to the surface. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. The fight for my life had started. I sat frozen in my car, the echoes of their words bouncing inside my skull. Betrayal layered on betrayal. Antonio, my husband in bed with Vanessa, my sister. And beneath it all, a darker truth about Will's inheritance and my very identity. I could barely breathe. I leaned my head against the steering wheel, closing my eyes. Images of childhood came flooding back. Vanessa and I, matching dresses, matching birthdays, matching smiles for the camera. But even then, hadn't I always felt a step behind her, like she belonged in some secret circle I could never enter, like I was a guest in my own family. The memories sharpened, now reframed by her venomous words. She's not even her daughter. What had that meant? My chest tightened with a sick kind of dread. I wanted to believe it was just another cruel manipulation. Vanessa had always known how to twist the knife, but something inside me whispered otherwise. The long silences when I asked Mom about my childhood. The way Vanessa and Mom sometimes shared private jokes, laughing at things I didn't understand. The blank look in Mom's eyes whenever I pressed too hard for details about Dad. The puzzle pieces began to rearrange themselves, forming an image I didn't want to see. And Antonio, God, Antonio. My marriage, already fragile, now shattered. I thought about the years I'd poured into us, about the way I'd bent myself into knots trying to fix what was broken. But what if it was never broken? What if it was a lie from the beginning? What if Antonio had only been waiting for the right moment to discard me? My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, startling me, a text from Antonio. "Where are you? Thought you'd be back by now?" I stared at it until the words blurred. Back by now. As if I had only stepped out for milk. As if I hadn't just overheard the destruction of everything I was. My hands shook so violently I dropped the phone. Another text followed. Your mom is looking for you. Lunch. Don't be late. Lunch. My mother's birthday lunch. I had completely forgotten. The thought of sitting at her table, pretending everything was normal, while my insides rotted with secrets, it made me nauseous. But another thought crept in. Maybe I could use this. Maybe Monica would slip. Maybe she would finally tell me what Vanessa's words had hinted at. I turned the key in the ignition, the car roaring to life. Gravel crunched under the tires as I pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind the house I no longer recognized. As the city blurred past my windows, my mind swung like a pendulum, rage, grief, disbelief, and back to rage again. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. By the time I pulled up to my childhood home, I felt hollow. My legs carried me up the walkway on autopilot. Mom was in the kitchen, immaculate as ever, silver hair, perfectly styled makeup, flawless. She looked up, startled. Leslie, there you are, she said, her voice calm but her eyes sharp. I was starting to worry. I forced a smile. Sorry, Mom, I got held up. Her gaze lingered on my face, searching. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? Just tired, I told her, sliding into the chair where I had once done my homework, once shared stories about crushes and heartbreak. The room was filled with ghosts of a life that maybe had never been mine. I cleared my throat. Mom, do you have any pictures of me as a baby, from when I was born? The coffee cup in her hand froze mid-air. For just a flicker, her mask cracked. Then she set the cup down with forced calm. You know I do. They're in the albums upstairs. Not those. From the hospital, right after I was born. Her hands trembled. Why would you ask that? I shrugged, lying through my teeth, just thinking about family history, for when Antonio and I have kids someday. Her face drained of color. She whispered, Leslie, why don't you tell me what's really going on? I stared at her, this woman who had raised me, who had braided my hair, who had kissed scraped knees and tucked me into bed. But right now she looked like a stranger, and the question clawed its way out of me before I could stop it. Who is my real mother? The coffee cup slipped from her grip, shattering across the tile. Brown liquid spread across the floor like a stain that would never come out. Silence. Then softly, her voice breaking, How did you find out? My world tilted sideways. I had only suspected, but her reaction confirmed it. So it was true. Before I go on, I want to ask you something. If you were in my shoes, if you had just overheard your husband and your own sister plotting against you, mocking you, and hinting at a family secret that could erase your very identity, what would you have done? Would you confront them immediately? Or would you stay quiet, collecting proof? Tell me in the comments, because your thoughts matter more than you realize. That question sat like fire in my chest, because I already knew my answer. I wasn't done listening. I wasn't done digging. And the truth, however much it burned, was waiting to be dragged into the light. My mother's voice trembled as she repeated her question. How did you find out? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat had closed up, words trapped inside like prisoners. I had suspected. I had overheard whispers, fragments of a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. But hearing her admit it, hearing the truth break from her lips, was a blow I wasn't ready for. I stared at her. The woman who had raised me, the woman whose face I thought I saw in the mirror all my life. And now, the stranger who had hidden my origins for 28 years. So it's true, I whispered. You're not my mother. Her hands shook as she tried to gather the shattered pieces of her cup. Leslie, please, let me explain. Explain, the words scraped like glass in my ears. How could there be an explanation for a lie this big? She sank against the counter, her shoulders slumping, as if the weight of 3 decades of secrets had finally broken her. Your father, he was married before me, to a woman named Isabella. She died when you were 6 months old. The kitchen swam before my eyes. Isabella. A name that had never been spoken in our house. A ghost suddenly pulled into the light. And you, my voice cracked. Who were you? Her eyes filled with tears. I was his secretary. We'd been having an affair for 2 years before Isabella became pregnant. When she died, someone had to care for you. He was falling apart. I moved in. We married when you were 2. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over a chair. Each word was another stone on my chest. So Vanessa, She is mine, Monica admitted. Yours and your father's. 18 months younger than you. We told everyone you were twins. It was easier than explaining. Easier, I spat. Easier than admitting you destroyed a marriage. Easier than telling me the truth. Easier than letting me know who my real mother was. She winced, covering her face. I loved you. I raised you. Doesn't that count for something? I shook my head. Did you love me, or did you resent me? Did you see me as your daughter, or just as a reminder of the woman you replaced? Her silence was answer enough. And the will I demanded. What did Dad's will really say? She faltered, gripping the counter for balance. Half of everything was meant for you. The house, the savings, the insurance. Half to you, half to Vanessa. The words hammered into me. But you told me. I told you what I needed to tell you, she snapped, her voice suddenly hard. Vanessa needed security. She needed to be cared for. You were strong, independent. You had Antonio. You had your life. I laughed bitterly. So because I was strong, I deserved nothing. Because I married a man you thought would provide, you stole what was mine. Her face crumpled. I only wanted to protect you. Everything I did for love. Love, I hissed. Is that what you call it? Lying, stealing, erasing my identity? I turned away before she could answer, storming down the hall. My legs trembled, but I forced them forward. She called after me, her voice breaking. Leslie, wait. Please, you have to understand, everything I did was for him. I loved your father so much. I spun around, my voice sharp as a blade. And what about Isabella? Did you love her too when you were sleeping with her husband? Did you love her when you stole her child? When you let her die thinking her family was whole? Her face drained of color. She whispered she was dying anyway. Something inside me snapped. A string pulled too tight, finally breaking. You let her die believing he was faithful. You let her die without knowing her daughter would grow up calling her murderer Mom. Her sobs filled the kitchen, but I felt no sympathy. The part of me that had always made excuses for cruelty, the part that still wanted to see the good, died right there. I stormed toward the study, tearing books from the shelves until I found the safe. The combination was my father's birthday. My hands shook as I twisted the dial, praying, dreading what I'd find. The door swung open. Inside was the truth Monica had buried. My birth certificate, Isabella's death certificate. The original were written in my father's own hand, and at the bottom, a bundle of letters tied with a faded pink ribbon. I pulled them out, my heart pounding. The first envelope bore my name, to my dearest Leslie. The date was 2 months before his death. With trembling hands, I unfolded the paper. My dearest Leslie, it began. If you are reading this, then I am gone. And I pray that Monica has found the courage to tell you the truth. I should have told you myself, but I was a coward. Your mother Isabella was the most beautiful woman I ever knew. She loved you with all her heart. Tears blurred the ink, but I kept reading each word, tearing and healing me at once. He had known. He had known the truth would come out one day. He had begged Monica to give me Isabella's letters, her photographs, her jewelry. He had wanted me to know her. And now, holding those letters, I finally did. I sat on the study floor with the letters spread around me like fragile artifacts from another lifetime. My hands shook as I read the words again, trying to imagine the man who had written them. My father Franklin had lived with his own guilt, his own cowardice, but at least he had left me this. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that Isabella had been real, that her love for me had been real, even if it had been buried under decades of silence. Each page carried her memory. In one letter, Franklin described how Isabella used to sing me old Spanish lullabies, rocking me until I fell asleep. In another, he admitted how terrified he was to raise me without her, how Monica convinced him to keep my parentage a secret. His handwriting trembled on the page, as if weighed down by shame. I pressed the papers to my chest and whispered to no one, "You loved me. You really loved me." But alongside the tenderness came something darker, rage. Because while my father had been too weak to tell me the truth, Monica had been ruthless enough to bury it. And Vanessa had mocked me for not knowing. She had relished every moment of my ignorance. I heard footsteps in the hall. Monica's voice trembled from the doorway. Leslie, what did you find? I turned, clutching the letters like a shield. Everything. I found everything you tried to hide. She sagged against the frame, her face pale. Please, you have to believe me. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to protect you. Protect me. My voice cracked like a whip. By stealing my inheritance, by letting me grow up believing lies, by letting Vanessa sneer at me like I was less than her. Her lips trembled, but she had no answer. I stood, my legs unsteady, but fueled by something fierce. You didn't protect me. You punished me. You resented me because every time you looked at me, you saw the woman whose life you stole. Her tears fell fast. I loved you in my own way. I shook my head. Love doesn't erase someone's identity. Love doesn't steal what belongs to them. Love doesn't make you lie for 28 years. For the first time, Monica had no mask. She looked old, small, broken. But I didn't feel pity. I felt something stronger, resolve. I gathered the documents, tucking them into my bag. I need to see the original will. I need Isabella's things. I need the truth. All of it. Her shoulders sagged. They're in the attic, a trunk with her name on it. The attic smelled of dust and cedar. In the far corner, I found a trunk marked in faded gold letters, Isabella M. Santos. I opened it and the air itself seemed to shift. Inside were photographs of a woman who looked so much like me it made my chest ache. Jewelry that still sparkled even in the dim light. Letters written in Spanish waiting to be translated. A baby book filled with careful handwriting, each milestone recorded until the words stopped abruptly at 6 months. On the last page was a note, shaky but clear. My beautiful Leslie, I am so sorry I cannot stay to watch you grow. But I will always be with you in your heart. Be strong. Be brave. All my love, Mama. Tears blurred my vision, but this time they were not just of grief, they were of recognition. For the first time in my life, I felt connected to someone who was truly mine. I closed the trunk and carried it down the stairs, trip by trip, refusing to let Monica's pleas slow me. She followed, begging me to listen, to understand, to forgive. But I didn't stop. I was done listening to lies. I loaded the trunk into my car and turned to her one last time. I'm taking this with me. I don't know where I'm going yet, but I'm not staying here. I can't. She reached out as if to grab my arm, but I stepped back. Don't follow me. Don't call me. You've stolen enough. The trunk sat heavy in my car, but in my heart it felt like freedom. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I was leaving with my mother's memory, with my father's confession, with the proof of who I was. The sun had dipped low by the time I drove away. Shadows stretched across the street, and the house behind me seemed smaller, stripped of its power. I had been raised inside its walls, but it had never truly been my home. Now I was free. And I wasn't going to stop until I reclaimed everything that had been stolen. So, before I go further, let me pause right here. If you've ever had a moment where the truth shattered everything you thought you knew, when a single discovery made you see your life differently forever, share it in the comments. And if you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe and join our community. These stories of betrayal and justice are not just mine. They belong to all of us who've had to fight to reclaim our lives. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, gripping the steering wheel. My journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. The hotel room smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet, but to me it was sanctuary. I had checked in under a name that wasn't mine, sliding my credit card across the counter with hands that still trembled from adrenaline. The clerk had smiled politely, no questions asked. And just like that, I had a place where Monica couldn't reach me, where Antonio couldn't track me, and where Vanessa's voice could no longer echo in my ears. I sat on the bed with Isabella's trunk open on the table. Her photographs lay scattered across the cheap wood surface faces from another lifetime staring back at me. One in particular drew me in, a picture of her holding me as a baby, her smile radiant, her dark hair shining in the sunlight. It was eerie how much I resembled her. For years, people had told me I didn't look like Monica, but I had brushed it off. Now I knew why. I ran my fingers over the baby book, the last entry at 6 months, stopping abruptly like a life interrupted. I traced her handwriting, every loop and flourish, as if I could touch her through the ink. A note on the last page had left me sobbing until I had no tears left. Be brave. Be everything I know you can be. The words became a vow, but bravery didn't erase rage. My phone buzzed constantly, Antonio, Monica, even Vanessa, each desperate to know where I was. I let the calls go unanswered, each vibration only strengthening my resolve. I wasn't going back, not to the house, not to the lies. Instead, I picked up the phone and dialed the one person I could still trust. Carmen. My voice cracked when she answered. Leslie, are you okay? You sound strange. I swallowed, staring at Isabella's photo. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Of course, what's wrong? Have you ever noticed anything off about my family, about the way they treat me? There was silence on the line, the kind that stretches until you're sure it means yes. Finally, Carmen sighed. Honestly, yes. I've always thought it was weird. Your mom and Vanessa, they share things you're not part of. And Antonio, she hesitated. My throat tightened. What about Antonio? I never liked him. I know you love him. But he treats you like you're lucky to have him, like he's doing you a favor by being there. It always rubbed me the wrong way. The words landed heavy, but they weren't cruel. They were true, too true. I closed my eyes. Carmen. I found out everything. The affair, the lies, the will, Isabella. She stayed quiet, letting me spill it all. The trunk, the documents, the overheard betrayal in my own bedroom. When I finished, my chest heaved as if I had run a marathon. Jesus Christ, she whispered. Leslie, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I can believe it. But hearing it out loud, this is monstrous. I need to know my options. I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to know if I can still claim what's mine, legally. Carmen didn't hesitate. I'll call my cousin Miguel. He's a lawyer. Estate law, actually. If anyone can help, it's him. But Leslie, promise me something. What, Promise me you'll be careful. People who lie like this, who steal like this, they don't stop when you confront them. They double down. They cover their tracks. Sometimes they get dangerous. I glanced at Isabella's photograph again, at the curve of her smile, the strength in her eyes. I know, I said softly. But I can't let them get away with this. Not after 28 years. They stole my inheritance. They stole my identity. They stole her from me. And I'm going to make them pay. The next morning I woke with a plan already forming. If I wanted justice, I needed proof. More than letters. More than my father's words. I needed their voices. Their admissions. Their guilt captured where no one could deny it. That night, I sat with Carmen in the hotel room, Thai food containers littering the table between us. She looked at me with the kind of concern only a best friend can give. If you're serious about this, we can set up a recorder. Small. Hidden. You'll need to get them talking, make them think you're still in the dark. That's when people slip. I nodded the decision, heavy but certain. I'll do whatever it takes. Because Isabella had told me to be brave. And brave didn't mean running. It meant fighting. The following evening, Carmen arrived at the hotel with a small paper bag. She set it on the table and slid it toward me. Inside was a sleek digital recorder, no bigger than a deck of cards. It looked harmless, ordinary, but to me it was a weapon sharper than any blade, stronger than any fist. With this, I could capture the truth that had been twisted against me my whole life. We rehearsed late into the night. Carmen sat across from me, pretending to be Monica, then Vanessa, then Antonio. I practiced keeping my voice calm, weaving questions that seemed casual, harmless, until they weren't. The goal wasn't to accuse. The goal was to let them believe they were still in control, still safe. That's when people revealed the most. Carmen placed a steadying hand on mine. You have to remember, Leslie. Don't let them see your anger. Not yet. Play the part. Smile if you have to. The more comfortable they feel, the more they'll talk. I nodded, though inside I was shaking. It felt unnatural smiling at people who had gutted me, pretending to trust those who had stolen everything. But rage alone wouldn't win. Precision would. The next day I called Monica. My voice quivered, but I forced myself to sound contrite. Mom, I'm sorry about the way I acted. I want to make it up to you. Why don't you and Vanessa come over for dinner tonight? There was hesitation on the other end, then relief. Of course, Leslie, I'd like that. Antonio didn't question it either. He seemed eager for a chance to mend what couldn't be mended. Or maybe he just wanted to keep control. Either way, he agreed. That evening, the living room glowed with candlelight. The recorder was hidden behind a picture frame on the shelf, its tiny red light blinking faintly where no one could see. I forced a smile as I handed out glasses of wine. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Monica looked anxious, and Antonio wore his charming mask. I want to apologize. I began careful with my words. I've been under a lot of stress, and I took it out on you, Mom. I'm sorry. Monica's shoulders eased. It's all right, Leslie. Families fight. I sipped my wine, letting silence stretch just long enough. You were right, though. Families do make difficult decisions. Like when Dad died and you had to handle all the legal stuff. That must have been so hard. Monica hesitated. It was complicated. Your father wasn't always straightforward about money. My pulse hammered. I leaned forward, feigning curiosity. But you found everything eventually right. All the accounts, the documents. Her hands trembled slightly. I think so. Why do you ask? I shrugged lightly. Just seems like he should have left more. He worked so hard, saved so much. It's strange that there wasn't more. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Dad left what he wanted to leave. You're being paranoid. My heart leapt, but I kept my expression neutral. Maybe it's just... I found some papers in his study yesterday. The room went dead still. Antonio's hand tightened on his glass. Monica's lips parted, but no words came. What kind of papers? Vanessa's voice was sharp. Letters, I said softly, from Dad, about his inheritance. Antonio jumped in quickly, his tone firm. Leslie, you're letting your imagination get the better of you again. Am I? I tilted my head, letting my eyes linger on Monica. Because the letters seemed pretty clear. Half of everything was meant for me. Her face went pale. That's impossible. He never said she cut herself off, realizing too late. I leaned back, letting the silence do the work. Their fear hung in the air thicker than smoke. Vanessa shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. Dad left everything to Mom. We were all there when the will was read. Were we? I asked calmly, or were we watching a performance? Her lips curled into a sneer, but I could see the panic behind her eyes. My blood pounded in my ears. The recorder was running. Every word, every slip was mine to keep. And here's where I paused to ask you. If you had the chance to trap the people who betrayed you, your own family, would you do it? Would you sit across from them at dinner, smiling, while secretly recording every lie that slipped from their mouths? Or would the risk be too great? Tell me in the comments, because I wonder if I was brave, or just desperate. The questions burned in my chest as the evening spiraled forward. Their masks were slipping. Their voices were cracking. And soon the truth they had buried for decades would spill into the open. And this time, it would all be on tape. The living room felt like a stage, and every person sitting in it was performing. Only I knew the play was about to collapse. Monica's hand shook as she tried to keep her glass steady. Vanessa paced near the fireplace, her sharp heels striking against the hardwood. Antonio leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his jaw tight as though he was waiting for the right moment to take control. I sat perfectly still, forcing my breathing into even rhythm. My smile was faint, calculated, but inside my chest a storm raged. Every second felt like a thread tightening around their throats. So I said casually, swirling the wine in my glass, Dad left more than we thought. Maybe accounts, maybe letters, maybe secrets. Antonio's eyes snapped to mine. What exactly did you find? I let the silence stretch, pretending to hesitate. Just a few notes. Nothing important. Unless you count the part where he said I was supposed to inherit half of everything. The air shifted. Vanessa froze. Monica pressed a hand to her lips. Antonio clenched his fists, but his voice stayed smooth. Leslie, you're misunderstanding. Your father might have written things when he was grieving. That doesn't mean it was final. I tilted my head. So you knew about the letters? His expression flickered just for a second, but it was enough. Vanessa jumped in, her words sharp as knives. You always wanted more than you deserved. Dad pitied you, that's all. You think he'd really give you half, you, the outsider. Vanessa. Monica snapped, but it was too late. I leaned forward, my smile gone. What did you just call me? Vanessa faltered, her face reddening. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. You called me an outsider. 'Cause you've always known, haven't you? You've always known I wasn't Mom's daughter. The silence was deafening. Monica's face crumpled, her voice a whisper. Leslie, please. Tell me the truth, I demanded. My voice shook, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was power. Tell me who I am. Monica's tears spilled over. You are your father's daughter, but Isabella was your mother. The words crashed into me even though I had already guessed. I forced myself not to flinch, not to show the devastation clawing at my chest. Because the recorder was running. Because I needed her to keep talking. So you admit it, I said evenly. You raised me as your own while hiding the truth. You let me believe I was your child. And you let Vanessa treat me like dirt because of it. Monica sobbed. I did what I thought was best. I loved you, Leslie. No, I said coldly. You loved control, and you loved your lies. Antonio finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. That's enough. You're upset, but you don't know what you're saying. I turned to him slowly, meeting his gaze. I know exactly what I'm saying. I know you've been lying to me. I know about you and Vanessa. I know you've been planning this together. Vanessa gasped, her eyes darting to Antonio. What is she talking about? He tried to mask his panic, but I could see it. The tightness in his jaw, the flicker of fear in his eyes. Leslie, you're being paranoid. Am I asked, my voice steady. Then explain the hotel receipts. Explain the jewelry you never gave me. Explain why I heard you in our bedroom yesterday, calling me naive while you touched my sister. Vanessa's face drained of color. Antonio. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Enough, you're twisting everything. But I was already on my feet, the blood roaring in my ears. No. For the first time in years, I see clearly. I know who I am. I know what you've done. And I've recorded every word tonight. I reached behind the picture frame, pulling out the small recorder. The red light blinked like a heartbeat. I held it up high, letting them all see. Every lie, every confession, every truth you tried to bury, I have it all. Monica collapsed into sobs. Vanessa's hands flew to her mouth. Antonio's face twisted with rage. You can't, he hissed. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I would. My voice was calm now, almost serene. Because you destroyed me, and now I'll destroy you. For the first time, they were silent, truly silent. Their masks shattered, their secrets exposed. And I realized something. This was only the beginning. The silence in that room was suffocating. 3 faces stared back at me, Monica broken and weeping, Vanessa pale and trembling, Antonio rigid with fury. The blinking red light in my hand was proof that their world was collapsing. For once, I wasn't the naive woman they could deceive. I was holding the knife, and they knew it. Monica's sobs filled the room. Leslie, please. I raised you. I loved you the best I could. I shook my head. You raised me on lies. You loved me like a thief loves stolen jewelry, always terrified someone would discover it wasn't yours. Vanessa snapped, her anger flaring through fear. What do you want? Money? We can give you money. I laughed, bitter and sharp. I don't want your money. I want justice. I want the truth out in the open. Antonio's voice cut through, low and threatening. You're playing a dangerous game, Leslie. If you take this to the police, you'll destroy this family. You'll destroy yourself too. I stepped closer, holding his gaze. No, Antonio. You already destroyed me. I'm just finally showing the world what you are. I could see the panic ripple across his face, though he tried to mask it with calm. He wasn't worried about the marriage, or even about me. He was worried about exposure, about consequences. I'm giving you 24 hours, I said, my tone steady as stone. After that, I go to the district attorney. Every word of this recording, every document from Dad's safe, every receipt, every lie, every betrayal, I'll make sure the world knows. The 3 of them froze, stunned by the certainty in my voice. I turned toward the stairs, my body trembling with adrenaline, but my head clear. And Antonio, I added, pausing, you'll be out of my house tonight. If you're still here in the morning, I'll call the police. This is my house too, he growled. Actually, it isn't, I shot back. The deed is in my name, because my credit was better. For the first time, Antonio looked cornered. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came. Monica sobbed harder, reaching for me. I ignored them all and walked upstairs to pack a bag. When I came back down, the 3 of them were still sitting in stunned silence like statues carved from guilt and fear. I walked out the door without another word. The night air hit my face like ice. I loaded the bag into my car and drove straight back to the hotel. Every muscle in my body screamed with exhaustion, but my mind was on fire. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. The next morning, Carmen drove me to meet a lawyer she trusted, Cindy Valdez. Cindy was in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She spread the documents across her desk, listening as I told her everything. The safe, the letters, the recording. When I finished, she leaned back, her expression grave. "This is substantial. We're talking about fraud, forgery, theft, conspiracy. And with this recording, we can prove it." My chest tightened. What happens now? "Now we build a case," Cindy said. "We gather every piece of evidence, every witness, every financial record. Then we take it to the district attorney. It won't be quick, but it will be strong." "What about my inheritance? Can I get it back?" "That's a civil matter," she explained. "But yes, with this evidence, I believe you can reclaim what was stolen. It won't erase the pain, but it can restore what's rightfully yours." For the first time in days, hope flickered in me. Maybe justice wasn't just a dream. Maybe it was possible. But that hope was fragile, because deep down I sensed the fight had only just begun. Antonio wasn't the kind of man to back down quietly. Vanessa had venom in her veins. And Monica, broken as she looked, had been hiding lies for 30 years. As I left Cindy's office, my phone buzzed. A text from Antonio. "You don't know what you're doing. Stop before you ruin everything." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. The truth was, maybe he was right. I didn't know everything yet. There were still shadows I hadn't uncovered, still secrets buried deeper than wills and lies. And one of those secrets was about to shake me more than anything I had heard so far. Before I reveal what came next, I need to ask you something. If you were standing where I stood, holding evidence that could destroy your family, your marriage, your entire past, would you use it? Or would you bury it, knowing the fallout could consume everyone? Tell me in the comments, because this is the moment where justice and revenge begin to blur. The line between the two was about to vanish for me. Carmen was waiting for me in the hotel lobby when I returned from Cindy's office. She stood up the moment she saw my face. So what did she say? I sank into one of the armchairs, exhaustion dragging down every word. She says I have a case. Fraud, forgery, theft, all of it. If we can prove Monica and Vanessa hid the will and Antonio benefited, we can bring them down. And I can reclaim the inheritance. For a heartbeat, relief flickered across Carmen's face. Then she frowned. "Leslie, you realize they won't just roll over, right? They'll fight. People like that always do." I nodded. "I know. That's why I need more proof. I need to make it airtight." That night I returned to the house not to sleep, but to search. Antonio's car was in the driveway. Through the window I saw him pacing the living room, phone pressed to his ear. I waited until he disappeared upstairs before I unlocked the door and slipped inside. The house smelled the same as always, cedar candles and Antonio's cologne, but it felt alien now, like walking through the set of a play I no longer belonged in. I went straight to the bedroom, my heart pounding. In Antonio's nightstand, I found a jewelry store receipt. A diamond necklace purchased 2 weeks earlier. My chest tightened. He had never bought me jewelry, not once. I photographed it. Then I moved to the closet. Behind a row of pressed suits was a small overnight bag. Inside, clothes, toiletries, and a hotel keycard from the Riverside. The same hotel Vanessa had been staying in since her lease ended. I snapped more photos, each image like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. Leslie, Antonio's voice echoed from downstairs. My pulse leapt into my throat. He was back sooner than I expected. I shoved the bag back into place, grabbed the receipt, and forced my face calm before stepping out of the room. He met me at the foot of the stairs, his face arranged into an expression of relief. "Thank God. I've been worried sick. Where were you?" I forced a smile, just thinking. I needed space. He studied me carefully, suspicion flickering behind his eyes. "We should talk. Over dinner. I made pasta." The kitchen table glowed with candles. A bottle of red wine stood open. My favorite dish steamed in a bowl between us. Under other circumstances, it would have felt romantic. Now it was theater, and Antonio was the lead actor. We ate in silence until he finally spoke. "I feel like we've been drifting. I don't want that. I want us back. I want us close again." I sipped my wine watching him. He was good, so good I might have believed him once. But I knew the truth now. "I'd like that too," I said softly. His shoulders relaxed. "Maybe we should get away, just the two of us. Napa, that bed and breakfast you love." I smiled faintly, wondering if that had been his plan with Vanessa instead. That sounds nice. After dinner, we moved to the couch. He slipped his arm around me, pulling me close. I forced myself to stay still to play the part. Leslie, he whispered, I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. I turned to look at him, searching for even a glimmer of sincerity. I love you too. The words tasted like ash. He stroked my hair, his voice low. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, I'm here for you. Always. My stomach twisted. He knew the walls were closing in. And this was his attempt to spin the story before it escaped his grasp. Antonio, I said softly, is there something you need to tell me? He stiffened. No, of course not. Why would you ask that? You seem nervous, I pressed, like you're hiding something. He forced a laugh. I'm just worried about you. That's all. I leaned back, pretending to be thoughtful. Funny. Because I found something yesterday in Monica's house. Letters from my father. Antonio went completely still. What letters, he asked, his voice tight. The kind that prove I was supposed to inherit half of everything. He swallowed hard, then forced a smile. Leslie, you must be misunderstanding. The estate was settled years ago. Legally, it's complicated. How would you know about legal complications unless you already knew about this? I didn't know anything. I'm just saying, you're lying. I stood, my pulse hammering. I can see it in your face. You know, you've known all along. His mask slipped then, just for a moment, and I saw the man beneath, the one who had called me naive, who had laughed with my sister in my bed. Careful, Leslie, he warned. You're talking about things you don't understand. I turned away before he could see the tears burning in my eyes. I wasn't broken. Not anymore. I was planning, and here's where I want to hear from you. If you were sitting across from a man you once loved, knowing he had betrayed you with your own sister, would you play along to gather more proof? Or would you confront him and risk everything right there? Let me know in the comments, because I need to know if I was smart or just walking into danger. Because the truth is, my plan was only getting started. That night, I lay awake in the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. My body ached with exhaustion, but my mind was a battlefield. Antonio's words, Monica's tears, Vanessa's sneers. They played on a loop, taunting me. I knew the truth now, but knowing wasn't enough. If I wanted justice, I needed undeniable evidence, something that would hold up in court and crush their denials before they even began. The next morning, Carmen arrived with a small box in her hands. Inside was the recorder, fully charged, ready for another performance. This time, she said firmly, we do it my way. You'll make them comfortable. Let them talk. No accusations unless you know they'll slip. We need them to incriminate themselves. I nodded, gripping the recorder like it was my lifeline. I can do it. We set the plan in motion. That evening, I called Monica and Vanessa, telling them I wanted to smooth things over. I invited them for dinner again, pretending I wanted to make amends. Antonio didn't hesitate either. His eagerness told me he was desperate to keep control. By the time the three of them arrived, the living room was set. The recorder was hidden behind a framed photo again, its blinking red light, my secret weapon. I served wine, offering smiles that felt like knives behind my lips. I've been thinking, I began as we sat down, about what Dad left us, about how complicated it must have been sorting through everything. Monica's hand trembled as she set her glass down. It was complicated. Your father kept things hidden. Accounts, papers. It wasn't simple. I leaned forward, feigning sympathy. That must have been overwhelming for you. Did you find everything? I think so, she said carefully. I tilted my head. Or maybe there was something you chose not to find. The silence was deafening. Vanessa's eyes darted to Antonio, then back to me. You're imagining things, Antonio cut in, his voice sharp. Your father's wishes were clear. Were they? I asked, my voice calm. Because I found his letters. He wanted half of everything to go to me. Monica paled. Vanessa stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Dad pitied you. Those letters were just words. Promises he never meant to keep. I froze, my heart pounding. There it was, her arrogance spilling out, caught on tape. What did you just say? I asked softly. Vanessa faltered, realizing too late what she'd admitted. I meant he didn't mean them literally. But Monica's face had already crumpled. Her voice broke as she whispered, It's true. Your father left half to you. The room spun, but I forced myself to stay steady. And you kept it from me. All of you. You lied for years. Antonio leaned forward, his jaw clenched. You don't understand how the world works, Leslie. Sometimes difficult decisions have to be made. Sometimes we protect people from truths they can't handle. No, I said coldly. You weren't protecting me. You were stealing from me. You were using me. His mask cracked fury flashing in his eyes. You think you're strong enough to take us down. You're nothing without us. No family, no husband, no one to stand by you. I stood, my hands trembling, but my voice like steel. You're wrong. I have the truth. I have my mother's words. I have my father's confession. And now I have this. I pulled the recorder from its hiding place, holding it high. The blinking red light glowed like fire. Their faces were portraits of panic, Monica sobbing, Vanessa stunned, Antonio seething with rage. You're finished, I told them. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal, you gave it to me yourselves. And now the world will know. For the first time, I felt the scales shift. For the first time, I wasn't the naive woman they mocked. I was the one with power. The three of them sat in stunned silence, their masks shattered. For decades, they had controlled the story, feeding me half-truths and burying the rest. But now, with a tiny, blinking recorder in my hand, I had turned their own voices into weapons. Monica collapsed back into the chair, her sobs rattling the wineglass beside her. Vanessa's face twisted between rage and fear, while Antonio's eyes darkened into something I had never seen before. Raw hatred barely hidden beneath his calm exterior. What do you want from us? Vanessa snapped. Her voice shook, but the venom was still there. I want justice, I replied, and you'll face it one way or another. Antonio leaned forward, his voice low. Think about what you're doing, Leslie. You expose us. You don't just ruin us. You ruin yourself. Reporters, courts, gossip. You'll be dragged through the mud. Do you really want that? I looked him straight in the eye. I'd rather live with the truth than die under your lies. Monica's sobs grew louder. Please, Leslie, don't do this. I know I failed you. But I raised you, didn't. I was there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story. Doesn't that count for something? I shook my head slowly. You didn't raise me out of love. You raised me out of guilt. And every time you looked at me, I was just Isabella's ghost staring back at you. The words cut deep. Monica buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking violently. I turned to Vanessa. And you've hated me from the beginning. Not because of who I was, but because of who I wasn't. I wasn't yours to control, wasn't yours to erase. Her lip curled. You were never my sister. Never. You were just the mistake Dad couldn't get rid of. The words stung, but they were proof that she had always known and had chosen cruelty over compassion. Antonio stood suddenly, slamming his hand against the table. Enough, Leslie, stop this before you regret it. I didn't flinch. You're scared, and you should be. I pressed the stop button on the recorder, sliding it into my bag. This conversation is over. The next time you hear my voice, it'll be in court. For the first time, none of them had an answer. Their silence was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. That night back at the hotel, Carmen waited anxiously. I placed the recorder on the table between us, the weight of it heavy in the air. Did you get it? She asked. I nodded. All of it. Monica admitted the truth. Vanessa called me an outsider. Antonio tried to silence me. It's all here. Her eyes widened. Then it's over. You've won. I shook my head. No, this is only the beginning. Because deep down, I knew the lies went deeper than money, deeper than betrayal. There were shadows still lurking in my family's past, and something told me Isabella's story wasn't finished. Carmen frowned, concern etched across her face. Leslie, what are you planning? I stared at Isabella's baby book, the words on the last page echoing in my mind. Be brave. Be everything I know you can be. I'm planning, I said quietly, to uncover everything they buried, even if it kills me. And now let me leave you with this thought. What would you do if the truth you uncovered about your family only led to darker secrets waiting underneath? Would you keep digging, knowing the next revelation might shatter you even more? Or would you stop content with the justice you already have? Think about it, because in my case, what I discovered next made the betrayal I'd already faced look almost small. Cindy, my attorney, called me into her office 2 days later. She looked more serious than I'd ever seen her. Spread across her desk were bank records, property transfers, and financial statements that stretched back years. "Leslie," she said, tapping a file with her manicured finger. "This is worse than we thought. Monica and Vanessa didn't just hide your inheritance. They used it. The house was sold. The accounts drained even your father's life insurance. They funneled everything into their own names. Antonio, too. He received a share through Vanessa. We can prove conspiracy." The words hit me like thunder. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft carried out with surgical precision. They had gutted my future while smiling in my face. Cindy leaned forward, her voice steady. "This is a strong case. With the recording, the letters, and the original will, the district attorney will have no choice but to prosecute. But Leslie, are you ready for this? Once we move, there's no turning back. They'll fight tooth and nail." I didn't hesitate. "I'm ready. I've lived in their shadow too long. It's time the truth takes center stage." Later that night, Carmen and I sat in my hotel room with Isabella's trunk open between us. She picked up one of the letters, carefully unfolding the fragile paper. "She wanted you to know her," Carmen said softly. "Every line in these letters was her fighting to reach you even after death." I swallowed hard, tracing Isabella's handwriting with my finger, and Monica made sure I never did. She tried to erase her, erase me. Carmen's eyes flashed with anger. "Then let's make sure Monica never erases another thing again." The next week, I stood outside the courthouse with Cindy. My legs trembled, but I held Isabella's baby book against my chest like armor. Inside were her words, her final note to me, begging me to be brave. And for the first time, I felt I was. The hearings began. Monica sat pale and hollow. Vanessa scowled, as if daring the world to challenge her, and Antonio's mask had slipped entirely into arrogance. But none of it mattered. The evidence was undeniable. The forged will, the bank records, my recordings, it all painted the picture clearly. They weren't victims of circumstance. They were thieves, liars, conspirators. Every time the prosecutor played a clip of my recording, I watched them flinch. Monica's voice admitting I wasn't her daughter. Vanessa's cruel words calling me an outsider. Antonio's threats. Each moment was a dagger they had unknowingly handed me. When the session ended that day, I walked out into the bright sun, feeling the weight of years slowly lifting. Carmen hugged me tight. "You did it. They're finished." I nodded, though deep inside I knew the war wasn't over yet. There were still shadows I hadn't touched, still questions about Isabella's death that clawed at me. But for now I had something powerful: clarity. For 28 years I had been the quiet one, the naive one, the woman who believed what she was told. Not anymore. I was my mother's daughter, Isabella's daughter, and I would not be silenced. And right here I want to pause and reach out to you. If you've ever felt like your voice was stolen, like your truth was buried under someone else's lies, this is your space too. Join our community, subscribe, and share your story. Because no matter how dark it feels, truth has a way of breaking through, and together we fight louder. As I looked back at the courthouse steps, I realized this wasn't just about reclaiming money or property. This was about reclaiming myself. And I wasn't going to stop until every secret was unearthed. The trial dragged on for weeks, each day peeling back another layer of deception. I sat in the courtroom, clutching Isabella's baby book in my lap, as lawyers and witnesses recited the details of my stolen life. Monica sat hunched at the defense table, her once carefully maintained elegance replaced by hollow eyes and shaking hands. She avoided my gaze as though looking at me would burn her. Vanessa, by contrast, radiated defiance. She rolled her eyes during testimony, whispered furiously to her attorney, and glared at me like she could set me on fire with her stare. Antonio. He was the calmest of them all. Smooth words, slick suits, the perfect performance. But every time the prosecutor replayed his voice, from the recorder calculating, his mask cracked just a little more. The jury listened intently as evidence stacked higher and higher. The original will, my father's letters, Kellerman's reluctant testimony about the falsified reading. Then came the bank records, transfers into Monica's accounts, down payments on Vanessa's house jewelry receipts linked to Antonio. Each page was another nail in their coffin, One afternoon, the prosecutor called me to the stand. My palms sweated as I took the oath, but once I sat down, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. For years, I had been silenced. Now I had a microphone and 12 jurors leaning forward to hear my truth. I told them about the day I forgot my keys, about the voices I overheard in my bedroom, about hearing my sister laugh while my husband called me naive. I described Monica's confession in the kitchen, Vanessa's cruelty, Antonio's threats. My voice shook at times, but I didn't stop. I looked each juror in the eye and made sure they saw the woman I had become, not a victim, but a survivor. When I stepped down, I saw Carmen in the gallery, tears shining in her eyes. She gave me a small nod, her silent way of saying, "You did it." The verdict came weeks later. Monica never made it that far, her body gave out before the jury could. A heart attack in her cell ended her story, leaving behind only a legacy of lies. I didn't attend her funeral. Antonio and Vanessa, though, were not spared. The jury found them guilty on all charges: fraud, forgery, theft, conspiracy. Vanessa was sentenced to 7 years. Antonio received 5. Their protests rang hollow in the courtroom, drowned out by the sound of justice finally served. But there was more. The civil court ruled swiftly once the criminal convictions were in place. The restitution order came like a thunderclap: $400,000, more than my father had originally left me thanks to penalties and interest. Antonio's assets were seized. Vanessa's house was sold. Monica's estate liquidated. The money was wired into my account, proof that at least some wrongs could be righted. When I saw the balance for the first time, I didn't feel joy. I felt free. Not because of the money itself, but because it represented something more. For once, I wasn't empty-handed. For once, they hadn't stolen everything. Still, the shadows lingered. The investigation into Isabella's death hadn't ended. Detectives had reopened the case, armed with the letter I found in the safety deposit box. When Isabella died, everyone believed it was cancer or a tragic accident. But now evidence pointed to something darker: tampered brakes, suspicious insurance inquiries, and my father's possible role in silencing the woman who had planned to leave him. That truth weighed heavier than all the others combined. Because reclaiming my inheritance was one thing, but accepting that my own father may have murdered my mother, that was a wound I wasn't sure would ever heal. Still standing outside the courthouse the day Antonio and Vanessa were sentenced, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The air smelled crisp, almost sweet. The sky stretched open, and for once it didn't feel like a ceiling pressing down on me. Justice wasn't complete, but it had begun. 5 years passed before I could tell this story without shaking. 5 years of rebuilding, of learning to live as myself and not the shadow they wanted me to be. The civil restitution gave me the means to start fresh, but it was more than money, it was a symbol. I bought a small house near Isabella's old neighborhood, close to the church where she once prayed. The walls were mine, the keys were mine, the life inside them was mine. For the first time, I wasn't living in a house filled with lies. I was living in a home filled with truth. I poured myself into work at a nonprofit that helped women escape abusive relationships. At first, it felt impossible standing in front of strangers, admitting I had once been blind, naive, broken. But every time I told my story, I saw eyes widen with recognition. I wasn't alone. My wounds became bridges to others, and slowly, I realized my pain could serve a purpose. I also began writing. At night, I'd sit at the kitchen table, Isabella's letters spread around me, and pour my soul into words. It wasn't just about the lies or the betrayal. It was about love, what it should be, what it should never become. 2 years later, my book was published. To my shock, it became a bestseller. Not because it was sensational, but because it was raw and honest. People wanted truth, and I had finally found the courage to give it. And then love found me again. Not the kind that demands silence or feeds on control, but the kind that feels like freedom. Miguel, Carmen's cousin, the lawyer who had helped with my case. He had seen me at my lowest and never flinched. He didn't try to fix me, didn't demand I pretend. He just stood beside me until I learned to stand on my own. When he asked me to marry him, my answer was simple: yes. On the morning of my wedding, I visited Isabella's grave. Fresh white roses, her favorite, lay across the headstone I had replaced Isabella Santos Herbert. Beloved mother, brave woman, forever remembered. I traced her name with my fingertips and whispered, I wish you could be here, but maybe you are. The sun broke through the clouds, then warm and steady on my face. For the first time in decades, I felt peace. Looking back, I see now that losing everything was how I found myself. They stole my inheritance, my identity, my faith in love. But in the end, they gave me something greater, the strength to fight the clarity, to see, and the courage to live authentically. I am Isabella's daughter, and I am free. And now I'll leave you with this. What would you have done in my place? Would you have chosen revenge, or would you have chosen peace? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear another story, just as shocking, filled with betrayal and redemption, don't leave yet. Watch the next video on this channel. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. And don't forget to subscribe because these stories aren't just mine. They're yours too. Together, we are building a community where truth always wins. Because if my story proves anything, it's this: lies may bury the truth for a time, but the truth never stays dead. The journey left scars, but they no longer define me. They are simply reminders, marks of battles fought and lessons learned. When I look in the mirror now, I no longer see the naive woman who once believed every word her family told her. I see strength, resilience, and the reflection of a mother I never had the chance to know yet, who lives in me every day. Life has a way of breaking us down so it can rebuild us into who we were always meant to be. For me, that breaking came in the form of betrayal by the people I should have been able to trust most. But survival transformed into clarity, and clarity became freedom. Today my world is simple. I walk through the small garden behind my home, watching roses bloom where once there was only concrete. Miguel's laughter echoes through the house. Carmen still calls every evening her friendship unshakable. And sometimes when the wind is just right, I swear, I hear Isabella's voice, soft and reassuring, reminding me to be brave. I've learned that justice doesn't erase pain, but it does open the door to healing. And real love doesn't chain you down or demand your silence. It lifts you. It sets you free. So I live now, not in fear, not in anger, but in peace. My story has become more than survival. It has become testimony to truth, to courage, to the quiet but unyielding power of choosing yourself even when the world tries to choose for you. And if you take anything from my journey, let it be this: even the deepest betrayal cannot bury who you are meant to be. The truth will always rise, and when it does, so will you.